Welcome back, everyone. Hi, Lauren. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Sally. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's dive right into deferrals. This is normally something I feel completely comfortable talking about because I deferred between high school and college. I took a gap year. It was very straightforward for me. So we should obviously go through kind of in general how it works, but we should also acknowledge that things are really different because of the coronavirus and how that's impacting colleges and universities. So I don't know. Let's dig in. Let's first start about let's talk about what deferral is and how people might think about it.
Sure. Well, I completely agree with you that typically in years past, when I've had these conversations with students, it's a really exciting conversation to have. Students come out because they want to have this time to explore, do something different, or take a break from school before diving into college. I find that the conversations we're having now is not so much about, I'm so excited to take the year off. They're kind of thinking, well, maybe I have to, or I should, or I don't want to do online courses, or can we afford it? Just the conversation has really changed. So I agree with you that this is stressful, and colleges are in the same boat as
Mhm.
students. I think that they don't really know what to expect. But what is a deferral? So if you have been admitted to a college, you have submitted your deposit to hold your place at that college, but you're saying that you are going to postpone starting. That might be for a semester, it might be for a full year, but you are asking to hold your spot for a particular reason. That's a deferral.
Mhm. Mhm. And so what are some of the different reasons why historically students might have decided to defer?
Typically it's to do a gap year. It's to do something different, to say, I want some life experience, or maybe I'm a little bit tired of the grind of high school, and before I dive into such a tough academic setting, I want to travel, I want to volunteer, I want to improve some kind of skill that I have, I want to grow in some kind of way, um, before I start college. So it's a time of growth and learning. Other reasons we've seen, it could be military. In certain countries, there's a military requirement. So that's been a conversation for some students. Could be medical reasons, but typically it's a time of growth, and the student comes to this decision organically. They say, I really want this time.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, personally, I wanted to take a year when I didn't have to worry about my grades. I actually did a postgraduate year in French-speaking Belgium, but my grades didn't matter. I was already into college, so I just really focused on learning French and learning the history of the country and, kind of embedding myself in a culture that was sort of remarkably different from my own. I mean, Europe seems like it should be the same, but I grew up in LA. I was the daughter of a single mother who went to Belgium. I was one of seven kids there, or in a family of seven kids, I should say, very traditional household,
So then
small
you were ready.
town.
Then you were ready to live in a dorm if you lived with seven other
Oh
people.
yeah, no, exactly. Like I actually had more privacy in my dorm than I did
Sure.
I had to share a room with one of the sisters,
Right.
so yeah, exactly. And just kind of knowing that I had to completely adapt meant adapting to college was easy
Mhm.
peasy, actually. Um so I think yeah, I just think there's a lot of great reasons to do it. But of course, some of those have gone away too. I mean, like, I don't know that any parent is really thinking realistically that they're going to be able to send their kid overseas next year, for
And
example, for the.
absolutely. And a lot of those more traditional gap year plans or even programs, because there are companies out there that you can partner with to form a gap year, they're changing their practices. So that might not be possible. So I think that that's, a really big piece of advice for students that are even thinking about to defer for a gap year, is to say, you need to have a very clear plan in place. And I would encourage a student to have several plans in place at this point and say, if is it something that you could do now, if that should be one of your plans, because we don't know if you're going to be able to travel, we don't know what you're going to, so if you can do it from home or in your community now, that might be something that you could continue on for the year. That might be one of contingency plans.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, travel is one option, but I mean, I've also seen students do conservation work. A lot of that is the kind of thing you can do while social distancing. So that might be very, very possible to still do, whatever your particular passion is. Maybe you want to take time off to, develop an app, or you have a business you're getting off the ground. I mean, all of these kinds of things. I want to be clear that colleges, at least historically, have been very, very willing, at least every college that I worked at, um, Reed, University of Chicago. I don't remember a deferral from Whittier, but I would imagine Whittier was open to deferral. We all said yes, as long as students had a good plan. And we did make students reapply for financial aid in case the finance situation had changed, but basically there was not going to be any sort of negative or downside to it. And we basically just said yes, as long as you weren't saying, I want to stay home and play video games. Like, that's not a good reason. So,
Right. And I think that that's traditionally how it worked. Students would submit their deposit to that one institution, say, hold my place. And then they would make the request directly to the admissions office with a detailed plan for how they're going to spend that year. And I would say colleges have traditionally been accommodating if they can be. I don't know that that's going to be the case. I think that colleges are going to, first of all, I don't, we haven't seen too many new policies come out. Some colleges have announced already, but I think that they're really waiting until, the next month is going to be really important to see how deposits have played out for schools, for them to decide whether or not they can grant a small number of deferrals, a lot of deferrals, a semester deferral, a year deferral. All of those questions, will play out in the next couple months.
Yeah. Yeah. I think students, like you said, they need to have multiple plans. And I think they also need to realize that they might need to just reapply. Like, if a student is really wedded to taking a gap year, to deferring for a year, they might really just need to be ready to be told no, and just decide to apply again, and see what happens.
Exactly. I've been talking with some students who, we're just brainstorming together, and they said, well, if classes are online for the first semester, I'm just going to defer and start in January. I said, well, hold on a second. That you might not be allowed to do that. That's really up to the college. So understanding those policies is really important, because you might not be allowed to do it, and then you've lost your place, or that just means you're going to reapply the following year. And some students say, well, I don't want to rewrite my essays. I don't want to submit all those applications again. It was a lot of work. So it's something to really think about.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the upside for students might be that, well, let me also say that I think things are going to be different for full pay students versus students who need considerable aid, right? Because some colleges, even if they let you defer, they're not going to let you keep your merit scholarship, right?
That's
They might say,
definitely
okay,
something to think
we'll
about.
keep your place, but a student, on the other hand, who's full pay, colleges might be more flexible with them, and they also might be at an advantage if they apply a year from now, when colleges are kind of really concerned about these things.
That could be. Definitely think it depends on the college and their financial situation. But I think that's a really important point, that if a student is going to ask for a deferral and they are receiving a merit-based scholarship, they need to ask, does that transfer? Will that carry over? That's a really important question to ask.
Yeah, it is all kind of interesting, because there are some students that, honestly, I would advise take a gap year for, I was thinking that they should take a gap year for a whole variety of reasons. Like, I'm working with 2 students right now who are in that category. And now I'm kind of wondering if they'll be able to,
Mhm.
because luckily for those students in both those situations, finances are not a concern. Like, things should work out there. The savings is there. It hasn't collapsed. It's, but now I'm kind of thinking, well, so what is this going to mean for them? Um,
I think the timing of it is also a tough one to figure out. My gut says if a student knows today, this is where I want to go to college, but I want to wait. I want to defer. I think putting in that request sooner rather than later, they probably have more leverage today than
Hmm.
down the road as colleges make more formalized policy changes. So I think sooner rather than later. However, just rushing into that decision, saying, "Well, I'm gonna submit that request just to hold my spot, and then if I change my mind, you know." That could put you in a really sticky situation, because as soon as you say you are deferring. They've now given your space, your place, to someone else on the waiting list. So, don't. It's hard. I'd say if you know for sure you want to defer, make that request sooner than later, but don't jump into it if you're still trying to figure it out, because the colleges are going to give your spot to somebody else.
Right, right, exactly. Um, I think that we also need to be really clear about colleges' policies. I mean, it's been kind of interesting to me. You need to understand the sort of commitment that a college feels that you're making if you defer. I mean,
Mhm.
some colleges are going to view that like an early decision commitment, that you're if you're deferring, you're definitely saying you're going. And then other colleges historically have been more relaxed about it. Like, like just kind of they might get back in touch with you in March or kind of February and say, "Hey, are you still planning on coming? If not, we're going to give your spot to someone else." So that's when the commitment occurs. But I don't know that colleges are going to be able to afford to be so flexible this time at this point.
They may not be, and I think on to go along with that point of students, of what kind of commitment that means. I've talked to a lot of students that say, well, especially with the the economy, maybe I'll hold my spot, but I'm going to take community college classes this year. That's something that you really need to make sure that the college's policy around that, because if you have deferred and held your spot at that school and then you enroll in community college, that eh, you could then have to reapply as a transfer student. Colleges will have very clear policies around, can you take one course, a few courses, or no courses at all elsewhere. And I think that might really come into play too with the current financial situation.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Anything else that students should be aware of, or should we summarize kind of all the things to think about?
Well, I think, the main point here is that there's still some unknowns of how this is all going to turn out, for students. I understand that it's stressful, but colleges are in the same boat.
Mhm.
I think the most important piece here is to be proactive. Start doing your research. If you have not deposited at a college yet, you're debating between a couple, and this might change what you decide. You need to be contacting those colleges. Ask directly. Say, what happens if I want to defer a semester for a year? What are your policies right now, and how might that change? So I think being really direct and proactive with your colleges now is the time to do that.
Mhm. And I do want to say that for the student for whom deferring is the right thing to do, I would still encourage them to do it. They just need to know that they're heading into something it's a risk to do it in some ways. Things are less certain than they used to be, but it's not such a risk that you're not going to get into a good college, because you might just need to apply again, but colleges are still going to need students. So like don't sort of not do it because you want everything sewn up into a tidy little bow, if it's still absolutely the right thing for you to do. I mean, that's kind of what I would say.
Completely agree with that point. And the only other thing I would say is, on the flip side, if you are bored now at home, the thought, if you think, that adding on a whole nother year is going to be easy, it might not be. So,
Right.
so
Yeah.
don't jump into that boat prematurely either.
Right, yeah, because that's true. Because your gap year, if you're a senior right now, your gap year will probably be at home. Your gap year is probably not going to be in Europe, so or wherever else you might have been thinking about going. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sally, and good luck to all those seniors trying to make these decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I want to actually talk really quickly about Bennington College. I like it when I have time to do school spotlights. And so Bennington is a really small college up in Vermont. It's got the grades are optional. There's no predetermined majors. You can really develop your own major. Which at Bennington College is completely the norm. It's not an exception. It's also known for phenomenal programs in writing and the arts. It's just really, it's a liberal arts college, but it is not what anyone would call a traditional liberal arts college. It's just over 700 undergraduates spread out among 440 acres in southwestern Vermont. The dorms are called houses. Students become part of a family community, gathering each Sunday. And majors at Bennington are called areas of interest. All students work closely with a team of faculty advisors to chart their own unique academic journeys, better known as plans. And they also help ground students' work in a practical, hands-on way, requiring that all students participate in an annual fieldwork term, which spans 7 weeks each winter. And it really affords students the opportunity to leave campus in order to pursue jobs, internships, or both domestically and abroad. And by the way, fun fact, if you're a creative person, it really has graduated a remarkable number of very creative people who are quite well regarded and well known. One example is the author of The Goldfinch, which won the 2014 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, written by Bennington alumna Donna Tartt. And then also Peter Dinklage, famous for his role as Tyrion in Game of Thrones, is also an alum, 1991. So they attract some pretty great students. Um, all right, so also I want to let you know, get ready for our show on May 5th when our regular host, Elizabeth Heaton, will be answering listener questions and talking about what to do now if you've chosen a college. If you want more information about how to handle the admission process in the time of COVID-19, please check out our show for March 26th. Our host, Ian, and a high school senior discussed how she is making her final decisions on which college, even though she can't visit again. So there was a lot of good information there. And we've also written, by the way, a lot of blogs about what to do now in COVID-19. You can go to our webpage, blog.getintocollege.com. That's blog.getintocollege.com. Also, the blog is really helpful if you want to search for a particular Getting In show topic. There's no search on the Voice America website, but you can search for the blog, find out the date that way, and then go and listen to our shows again. And last, don't forget, we're here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific. So check us out.